We're rolling.
We're rolling, okay. Hey everybody, Kris Gethin here of the Knowledge and Mileage podcast, and we have just had quite the afternoon. So for about the last 5 hours, Brian Hoyer here, the foremost building biologist, has just gone through the home, checked out all the types of frequencies that we'll go into detail now, the EMF, the dirty electricity, because as you guys know, I do whatever I can to kind of scramble EMF. Like you've heard about me, like, you know, putting the phone on airplane mode, using Defender Shield products, wearing the blanket when I'm flying overseas, switching off everything when I'm in the hotel. However, weirdly enough, the environment that is usually the worst is our home.
First off, we'll start with the magnetic fields and the flicker. So I'm going to be using this meter going around.
So what? That's an NFA 1000?
NFA 1000, it is what's called a Gauss meter. So it measures magnetic field issues in a house. When motors are running, they create a magnetic field that's oscillating.
Yeah.
Because it has a magnet in the motor that oscillates that field, and it pulses because it's spinning. So
this meter is specifically for like the dirty electricity in the house.
It's for electricity that has like if there's a wiring issue in the house.
Okay.
Or if there's like when the fridge is running, if you don't want to be too close to the fridge with the magnetic field, or sometimes those huge power lines that are outside, those have a large amount of magnetic fields because of the amount of current that's flowing through them. So if everything is wired correctly in the house, then this should be within a safe range. If it's not, then we'll have to kind of hunt down what that is.
Okay, what's a safe range?
We want this to be below 0.5 in the daytime areas.
Yeah. And
below 0.3 in the bedroom.
Okay, 0.5. All right, so let's see what's wrong in this room.
It's not a problem if it's like on the floor or on an area where you're not spending a lot of time, but what we want to do is kind of lift it up and see, okay, my whole body right now up to here is being exposed to 1.4, and as we get higher, so even my organs right now are being exposed to around 2 milligauss. And there's a lot of studies that show even at 0.9, it's been correlated with childhood leukemia from the magnetic fields from power lines. And so this is essentially the same type of field as what we'd be getting from power lines.
In your own house.
In your own house, yeah. And you can see it's related to the wiring from the lights and these switches here. So there's a wiring error from these switches. It shouldn't be creating that much current. The current's not being canceled out, which it should be if it was properly wired.
And I've discovered that in a couple of the rooms today.
Maybe we might have to stop at the beanbag room first.
Okay, beanbag room, I guess.
Yeah, beanbag room, sorry. Got a detour. If I see something, that's why I like the sound function as I'm using this, because I can go right by a room and I can hear the clicks increase in intensity, and then I know that there's some kind of issue going on somewhere. So throughout this whole room with the lights on, we're at like 2.5 milligauss. That's another.
So still way too high.
3-way switch.
Yeah.
So,
it's. Oh wow! It's a lot of.
You can actually kind of see them flickering.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're doing a little.
So much for your decoration, Dave. So, Brian, could you just, give the listeners and viewers a little bit of a background about, what is a building biologist, and what we did today, and why should other people listening and watching this video and listening to this podcast, why they should do something very similar to protect their health?
Yeah. So, just kind of stepping back and thinking about this from that more ancestral perspective, a lot of people who are into health and wellness, you're trying to eat more like what your ancestors ate, more like what humans are supposed to eat like, and trying to live more like how they live. That's why like grounding, sunlight, eating nutrient-dense whole foods, those sorts of things. That's very important for our health and well-being. It's what humans are supposed to eat. So, building biology or EMF shielding kind of has this idea that, we also need to be thinking about this energetic environment that's around us that was never here before the invention of electricity. We never had these pulsating currents and voltages of electricity in the history of mankind. And so what can we do to recreate a more healthy environment where our body can awaken up all of these dormant healing responses? And so what we do with shielded healing is we'll go into homes and we test 6 different stressors. We test the radiation coming up from the earth, we test the ground current, and we test the electric fields, the magnetic fields, the artificial light, the radio frequency, wireless transmissions, and then also the dirty electricity, the harmonics and electromagnetic interference that's riding on the lines of the house. And all that might sound confusing, but it's very scientific, and we can measure it, and we're measuring the interaction with the body because the body's conductive and runs on electrical signals. So this one, if any of your followers or anybody listening to the podcast is an electrician or they've worked with equipment for electrical, they know what a multimeter is. And this multimeter, we're plugging it into the ground and it's going into this COM port. So we're grounding the meter and we're going to be getting a reading of the actual voltage of your body in reference to the ground in your bed.
Right.
And so to do that, we'll just turn this on.
Lie in the bed.
Yeah, have you hop up in the bed. And then have you hold that. And it looks like we're at about 1,390 millivolts.
That sounds high.
So that's 1.39 volts.
And what number should you be looking at?
We want the number we want the number at 10 millivolts, and you're at like over 1,390.
Wow, so way over.
So yeah, that's really high. And then if you reach your hand up toward the wall from your just even your other hand, yeah, you'll see it goes up a little bit. Put my hand on the wall. And on this, there's an electrical cord over here, and then we'll just kind of shake hands here, yeah. And then what's the meter?
The number?
8.7.
8.7. So that's 8,700. Then go ahead and let go.
No, it's like 2.08.
2.08. Now I'm gonna walk away. Just simply walk away. And it went down back to 1.39. So my body is acting like a conductor. Through my body, this voltage was coming to your body like that from the source here.
Yeah.
So anything conductive can bring the voltage closer to your body and make it so that your body is receiving more of a stress from this electricity that's pulsating on a cellular level all night long while you're sleeping. So for that reason, we recommend to not have a metal bed or springs in the mattress and that sort of thing.
And we don't have springs, but we've got a metal bed. And luckily we're talking about replacing this bed. So, okay.
Cool. So yeah, when you do, we always recommend like having a completely wood bed. Screws, little brackets don't matter that much, but the big beams underneath a lot and support things underneath a lot of mattresses, they can actually cause quite a bit of an issue. And then they also act as an antenna for the wireless radiation. But a lot of that is a moot point after you shield a room, because then you don't have any electricity coming in. You don't have much of the wireless frequencies coming in. Yeah. And so we want to recreate an environment where we have the best chance of healing. And in order to do that, we really prioritize in on those 3 areas where your body's supposed to be in a parasympathetic state. And a parasympathetic state is your healing state, your body's innate healing, chosen healing time. So that's when you're sleeping, when you're eating, and then also where you detox. And so those are the most important areas to heal. And sleep is especially important because you're spending 8 hours, 1/3 of your entire day at least, in your bedroom. And that's an environment where you can control it. The entire wall. Because the wall is, the paint and the drywall, everything is made up of minerals.
Yeah.
And there's certain minerals that are conductive. So all of that together, whether it's acrylic or whatever is in the wall, it's made up of minerals that are conducting this electricity.
But is that a concern though? Because when you have it away from the wall and our head isn't against the wall, is it still a concern, or is it okay? Because when you measure from out here.
Yeah, well that's a good point. And this is the difference between electric and magnetic fields. Is magnetic fields, it's not a concern if you're out here. But with electric fields, they're emanating into the air, looking for a lower voltage potential, and anything conductive they're going to come onto. So,
right. So
even if I'm 19 volts per meter, if I measure your body right now, you've got that much voltage going through your body just standing there. Even though you're not barefoot and you're insulated from the ground there, you're just kind of floating. So we're concerned about things in the house, but also all these frequencies penetrating into your home as well. And we found a lot of both the things, outside sources and internal sources here at your home, which we're going to work to mitigate all of those things.
Yeah, it's interesting because I wonder how, for instance, if I'm electrosensitive, how that is affecting me, because you just don't know. You don't see it, you ignore it. Maybe you're in denial that it's there. But, some of the stories that I've heard from you today, where you've had people that dealt with such major fatigue to the extent that they couldn't work anymore. And when I asked you how old these people were, you said like early 30s. I was expecting you to say like retirement age. And then, obviously, there was a couple of issues with their home, but you got them fixed. Like, did they heal following then? Did you follow up?
Yeah, we follow up with all of our customers and continually help support them through the shielding process and also through their health journey. Because we're really kind of a group of health practitioners. I started off as a health practitioner. I still practice. I still put people through nutritional protocols and test their organs for stress and that sort of thing and build individualized protocols. But now we're doing these individualized protocols for homes, and then there's a lot of overlap with both of those things. And so a lot of people that come to us are just wanting to optimize their health. And for some of these people, we follow up with them and we have to tweak things. And so we always offer a free retest after we've come and installed the solutions. And when we do that, we'll tweak things and make sure that everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. Because as a health practitioner, what we want to do is rule out EMF as a stressor so they can move on and continue to do deeper healing. Because a lot of times it's the one thing that people haven't addressed that they have to rule out. And if anybody is seeing a natural health practitioner, you know that there's kind of a process where you eliminate certain foods from your diet, and then you'd get tested for toxins, and then also other kinds of stressors that are in your home, mold, all kinds of things. You've had your own mold journey. Mm-hmm. And then EMF is one of those ticks where you have to, and ticks is another one, by the way. So if you have Lyme disease, there's these ticks, if you've ever been bitten by a tick. But yeah, it's one of those check boxes where let's mark EMF off. We want to have a healing environment here, and it gives you your best chance for all of the protocols that you're working on to actually come to fruition and have improvements. So we've seen people improve immediately, where that was definitely the thing that was holding them back from healing. But there's other people who they'll do it and they'll see some improvements, but then they have some more work to do. But it's also helped them to alleviate a lot of that stress, that burden of stress that's on you all night while you're sleeping. So we really want to be able to be there to support people through the whole shielding journey, as we call it, so that they can feel like, okay, we've actually fixed this issue, and now we can move on and stop worrying so much. Because for a lot of people, this stuff is so overwhelming that they think about, I use my phone. I'm always exposed to this. I go to the airport. I travel. I'm exposed to this stuff all the time. Well, yeah, you are, but there is an environment where you can control it. And we don't want people to continually worry about it either, because worry can also add more stress to the body and actually make people sick as well. So there's kind of a balancing act, and we combine the shielding at home with protocols that they can have while they're out and about that help support their body to deal with the inevitable stressors of EMF that we're all exposed to on a daily basis.
But the most important time, when you are detoxing, you're recovering, you're getting rid of a lot of the toxins into your lymphatic system, is when you are sleeping.
Yeah.
You know? So it goes without saying that should be the most important place that, you know, that you are shielding yourself from this dirty electricity, from the EMFs, from the frequencies. So let's just go through the house here.
Sure.
Now, what did you find here today in the house that, you know, that I need to, you know, be conscious of and fix for the next time that you come and test this place, and hopefully it's all alleviated?
Yeah, so the main thing, the first thing we tested was we were in the kitchen, and we were testing the light and the magnetic fields at the same time. So what we like to do is flip on the lights and test the magnetic fields to see if there's any wiring errors in the house. I'm going to go ahead and turn these and see how that goes up.
0.8, 1.2, 1.4. So the more light switches you're putting on, the higher that's going up now.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Okay, so one of the wires
Don't sit on there again.
So it's not a problem if it's like on the floor or on an area where you're not spending a lot of time, but what we want to do is kind of lift it up and see, okay, my whole body right now up to here is being exposed to 1.4, and as we get higher, so even my organs right now are being exposed to around 2 milligauss. And there's a lot of studies that show even at 0.9, it's been correlated with childhood leukemia from the magnetic fields from power lines. And so this is essentially the same type of field as what we'd be getting from power lines.
In your own house.
In your own house, yeah. And you can see it's related to the wiring from the lights and these switches here. So there's a wiring error from these switches. It shouldn't be creating that much current. The current's not being canceled out, which it should be if it was properly wired.
Right. Okay, so we need to have an electrician come in and rewire this.
Yeah, but also we'll test the actual bulbs that you have, and if those bulbs are flickering, what kind of spectrum do they look like? We want the outdoor spectrum to match the indoor lighting environment, ideally. And then also we want it not to flicker, because the sun doesn't flicker. It has a constant beam of light beaming down on us with this full spectrum of energy. So we want to kind of mimic that in the house.
You can only imagine how much stress we're dealing with. Like, we should be in, obviously, in an environment like this, or in bed, or bedroom, whatever. We should be in a parasympathetic state. But we're actually in a sympathetic state. So it's like, how are you supposed to detox? How are you supposed to recover? How are you supposed to get rid of a lot of the toxins into your lymphatic system to drain it out, so then you can perform, or then you can sleep, or whatever?
And what we found was there's a lot of lights in your house that are flickering, LEDs, fluorescent lights. Even some of the lower wattage incandescent bulbs were flickering.
So the salt lamps.
Yeah, even the salt lamps and things like that. So we'll make full recommendations on what bulbs to get to switch out. And then also when we were testing the magnetic fields in the room and we flipped on the lights, my Gauss meter that measures the magnetic field started to buzz like crazy. So we found out there was a wiring issue on this floor, the same floor as the kitchen, the beanbag room, and the lights going downstairs to the garage. And so that was we think that had to do with the three-way switches. And so we'll have an electrician come in and guide them through that process and troubleshooting that and fixing the wiring error, because there's a code violation somewhere in there, and we just need to go through that with your electrician and have that fixed. So that's one of the things that needs to be fixed. And then from there, where did we go from there? We went to
the beanbag room.
Okay.
Because that had like a bit of a crossover correlation from those three-way switches into the beanbag room, into this living room area as well, and into the office.
Oh yeah, your office had it coming from the floor because the panel was down below, and all the wires were going through the office to that area. And so when there's a wiring error somewhere else in the house, wherever the wire goes, there's going to be a magnetic field coming off of that, especially when the lights are flipped on. But everything should be a lot lower once we get that issue fixed.
Right. Okay. Okay. And then we went in. What?
I was also going to ask, can you tell us what flickering is? Like, it's not something you're actually seeing, correct?
Right. Yeah. So the light flicker is something that happens, and your brain is not perceiving it on these lights, the LEDs and fluorescents. Sometimes you can physically see it with lights, and you're like, oh, we need to change that bulb out. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about flickering of the lights that's imperceivable to the brain, but your eyes, they respond so quickly that they're constantly adjusting to the 60 hertz flickering that's going back and forth, it's oscillating with the electricity.
Okay. What am I looking at?
So it's just a hiss,
sound.
a hiss that we're hearing, right?
Okay, yeah, I can hear that.
And now we'll go ahead and turn on one of the lights here.
Yeah.
So these ones over the island. So let's go ahead and point that towards the island.
Wow, okay, so there's a major flicker going on there then.
Yeah. So like with an LED bulb, each pulse of electricity at 60 hertz, that means it's 120 times per second pulsating back and forth. It gives the bulb the energy to turn on, but it turns off immediately too. So LED bulb turns all the way off and then back on 120 times per second. It does that. Whereas an incandescent bulb will heat up the filament and then it'll cool down a little bit between those pulses. So that's why the higher wattage the bulb, the hotter that filament gets, the less flicker you have. And then there's some LED bulbs that we recommend that have a conversion of the pulsed current to a constant current.
Right.
And that makes it so there's a constant source of light, and the bulbs that we found have a full spectrum. And so we'll have that in the report. We can have a link to that.
So what is the negative effect of that flicker?
So flicker, a lot of people report eye strain and headaches and that sort of thing, but it's also a really big drain on the adrenal system because the flicker is entering into your eye. And we talked about this a little bit while we were going around, that there's this functional test you can do, the pupillary response test, where you can shine a light into the eye and your pupil will constrict, and it won't be able to hold that constriction. It starts to pulse, and that shows that's a sign of adrenal fatigue. And so when your body's doing that, it's just, I think that it's a sign that you're around too much flickering light all the time, and your eyes always constantly trying to adjust to it. And so when you have out in nature, you don't have that at all. The only time you have a flickering light is if you're in a stress response, when there's sunlight beaming through a bunch of trees in the forest and you're running. And usually if you're running in a forest, there's a reason. And it's either you're chasing after something or being chased, is what I like to say.
Yeah, and that can have obviously a negative effect on like producing melatonin as well, and sleeping, getting into that calm, relaxed state to sleep.
Yeah, so there's a cortisol response that happens, and when your cortisol is elevated, your melatonin goes down.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So then we went into the garage. That seemed okay-ish, except for the lights. We needed to get the lights, the lamps, the bulbs replaced there as well.
Right. Yeah. So there's some fluorescent bulbs in there. Fluorescent bulbs create a magnetic field that come out about 1.5 to 2 feet usually, and some electric fields. And then also they cause dirty electricity, which is something we also measured later in the garage. And the solution for that is a whole house filter that helps your electricity to run more efficiently, but it's also cleans up the dirty electricity, all the pulsations and electromagnetic interference frequencies that are catching a ride on the 60 hertz frequency. And so it kind of quiets down the lines, makes it less harmful to your body. Dirty electricity, you can kind of hear it here on the electrical line. And basically what it is it's thousands of higher frequencies than 60 hertz that are riding on the electrical system. So that includes harmonic frequencies, and the electrical engineers that are listening will understand what I'm talking about here. Harmonic frequencies, and then also electromagnetic interference. So in a lot of like recording studios or places where you're looking to you're really looking to record for audio, you'll have a buzz that happens, or musicians, sometimes you hear the buzz when you have your amplifier plugged in and you have your guitar,
yeah,
and then you'll hear this buzz in the monitor.
Yeah.
A lot of times that's due to different types of electromagnetic interference, and so that can be hard on electronics. Like it will make your refrigerator run less efficiently, and different appliances in your home run less efficiently. But also because it's thousands of these pulsating frequencies that are randomized, it also is more stressful to the human body than just a straight 60 hertz pulsation, because it's amplitudes many more frequencies. And so you can actually hear that when you use a line EMI meter, a line electromagnetic interference meter, and you just plug that in, and you can hear all of that interference, the buzzing sound. It should be a lot quieter than that. And so there's 325 millivolts of different frequencies other than 60 hertz that are on the line that it's detecting. And there's different ways to mitigate that. One of the easiest ways to mitigate it is with a filter. This is a filter that we sell on our website. There's other filters on the market that work just as good as this, but with slightly different technology. You put that on and it reduces the amount of interference. So it was at like 360 before, somewhere around there. Now it's at 160. And the ultimate solution that we have is a whole house solution that's actually installed at the circuit breaker, and it filters for the whole house, and it's much more robust than this.
Right. That's much more efficient.
Yeah.
And then we went to the most important room of the house, the bedroom, that really needs to be kind of mitigated, but we didn't have such good news up there. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so we measured the magnetic fields up there, which were better than the rest of the house because they were kind of further away from the wiring issues in the house. And but the main issues up there were the electric fields from the wiring in the walls that's unshielded. So the voltage comes out from the walls, and we talked about how there's conductivity in all minerals, and so there was some voltage coming from the walls that was coming onto your body when you're sleeping, creating a voltage of, I think it was over 1,300 millivolts. That's 1.3 volts. And you just think about that happening all night long while you're sleeping. It's got all these micro contractions happening all over your body on a cellular level. And so your body's never able to truly actually rest. It's just always constantly pulsing all night long. So that was one issue. And then also the wireless frequencies. The higher you get, the more exposed you are to the towers. And so we had a lot of influx of radio frequencies, wireless radiation from the radio stations, the television stations, and the cell phone towers.
Right, okay. So, what do you think is going to be what is going to be the, what's the word that I'm looking for?
Solution?
Yeah, what is going to be the solution for, the bedroom in particular?
So the bedroom, for you guys, I think the best solution would be a canopy, just because you have wood floors, unless you wanted to do a complete remodel for your health. And there's this underlayment that you can put underneath the wood floors, paint that you can paint on the walls, shielded curtains, and we're essentially wanting to create a Faraday cage, something that blocks out all the frequencies coming from outside, the wireless frequencies. Mm-hmm. And then the paint would be grounded to block the electricity that's from inside the walls from coming out. And then we just need to be careful. We talked about the little plugins that you can use to turn off the power to the cords that are coming into the room and that would cause a higher body voltage as well. But for you guys, I think the best thing would be the conductive shielded canopy that we have with our organic shielding fabric, and that would be just a freestanding unit that you put over the bed, and it blocks out the same thing. It does basically the same thing as the paint would do.
Right, okay. And to kind of put that to the test, we actually put up a tent there.
Yeah.
That you and Joe McCullough are producing to come out in several months' time.
Folds up into this little thing right here.
Ah, that's what you travel with, yeah. Put that in your suitcase.
Yeah. It can fold up a third the size. I'll probably have a video on my website about how to do that, so you can fit it in a suitcase, because this is a little bit wide, but there's less tension on these poles if you fold it up in the way it's supposed to be.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
and they're not produced yet.
Not yet. They'll be available in the summer,
okay.
hopefully. So I help them develop this and make it so that it's perfectly sealed and everything.
Okay, so this is what I'm going to be sleeping in from now on, babe.
Basically sleeping in another room.
Is it snore proof?
Yeah.
It's a good contraceptive.
Definitely.
Yeah, you need it more than me then. Yeah?
That's right.
Alright, shall I jump in this thing then?
Yeah, so just take your body voltage outside here, and we're just going to show that. So go ahead and hold that, and I'll put the sound on here. So got about 840 millivolts outside, and yeah, go ahead and hop inside.
Okay.
There.
Wow, it's gone right down. Wow. It's down to 0.
0.
Down to 0.
Nothing inside. Yeah. So if I'm outside the tent and I touch your body though, it'll go up, just going up a little bit, but this whole thing is grounded.
Completely 0.
Completely. And there's nothing here that's actually conductive. This is all insulated, so you're insulated from the ground.
It's plugged in?
Yeah, it's plugged in over here. I got it grounded over here. So there'll be like a ground plug that actually snaps into this. I've just got it alligator clipped because I don't have the actual ground plug. So your body voltage is 0 in there. And then here's the other cool thing is that when you close it up, we'll go ahead and turn this radio on here. So I'll go to one station that has some music on it. Country
My
music.
favorite. Yeah.
So and then we'll take these readings too. I'm just going to turn this on. So we got all the cell phone stations and everything. Put that on your leg here. You hear it. Outside we're at 1800. I'll have you do that in a minute. I'm just going to close this up. Turn this down. Close it up. So the radio stopped.
That stopped.
Yep, that's really low. That was really loud before. But if you can grab this meter here and measure your body in there. Just,
0.
Well, just hold the top of it.
Oh,
right?
hold the top, yeah. Yeah, 0.
Still 0.
Still 0. And I think that is absolutely phenomenal. I'll definitely be getting one of them for when I'm traveling. But I could see just holding the meters and having a wireless radio outside of that tent, and then, you know, where there's just a lot of noise, a lot of frequencies being picked up, and then going inside of the tent and all of it getting completely blocked out.
Yeah.
Which I think is absolutely phenomenal. So the canopy would, in the same regard, do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the canopy would do the same thing. And yeah, that particular tent is a portable unit that you can take to like hotels when you're traveling and that sort of thing. The canopy for the bed for your home would be a larger one that would fit over the whole entire bed. And we like it to go about a foot out from the bed, so you have room to get out. And also there's a little bit of a resonance phenomena that we weren't able to really show here, but you have to kind of have a cleaner space to test to show this. But anything that shields has this resonance phenomenon that comes out about anywhere from 1 inch to 6 inches, and in higher areas possibly even more. So it's important to have a little bit of distance between you and the shielding material in those cases. But regardless, anything that you have, whether it's a smaller shielded tent or larger, it's going to be way better than not having any shielding whatsoever at all.
Mm. And you know, you're obviously traveling around the US, going into people's homes, and obviously, you know, you was at Ben Greenfield's place a couple of days ago. You've been there before, obviously Joe McCullough, Ben Lynch. There's a lot of people that you go and see, obviously, and I see that the trailer that you've got here, that is like a EMF and dirty electricity blocking trailer as well, that you and your family, your kids, are traveling and sleeping in.
Yeah. So right before we left on this trip, I was supposed to speak at the Upgrade Labs conference in Beverly Hills, and that ended up getting postponed. But we were already halfway through the country, and so but before the trip, we had bought this little trailer. I used the shielding paint on the bottom. The rest was already metal. We have the curtains up and everything that helps shield the silver cotton curtains. And so that we put a bunk bed in there. It's a little 5x8 trailer, and I got 4 kids, myself and my wife, who all just pile in there and sleep. And it's great because I don't have to, you know, no matter where we go, we're always shielded. And every time I've measured, even if it's like 8,000, 9,000 microvolts, which your place was around 2,500 at the highest point. Even in places where we've been around the country, like where it's maxing out my meters, we go in there and it's 0. So it's like, it's awesome because we're able to take that wherever we go. And we decided to do that instead of being in hotels, going in and out of hotels, because not only the EMF, but also the toxicity. I mean, I'm kind of very sensitive to bleach and different chemicals that they use on the linens. And so we have a newborn, and we didn't want him to be exposed to any of that either. So hotels are probably some of the most toxic places where you can be, for sure.
Well, one of the things that I really liked, that I think that would resonate with a lot of listeners, is that you said, you know, sometimes you're trying to get the kids to eat healthy, but they're picky eaters and maybe they're not going to eat dinner. But one thing that can put your mind at rest is that you can allow them to recover during their night of sleep because they're not being penetrated with all these dirty electricities and frequencies and EMFs.
Yeah, that's so important because, you know, as parents, sometimes we try so hard. Even, you know, a lot of people that get assessments from us are one member of the family, the husband or the wife, and they're concerned about the entire family, their spouse included. And maybe the spouse is really skeptical about all this EMF stuff, and they just think it's a load of crap, and they don't believe in it. And you know, we're pretty good about convincing people with the equipment that we bring, because it's very scientific and sensible and logical to talk about this from a more ancestral perspective. But you know, you kind of have this peace about it after you have the shielding done. You go into that room, you get 8 hours of healing therapy every single night. It's something that you can kind of be proud of. You just do it one time and you're done. And you know, we try to help people not to worry about it as much anymore after they've done the shielding of their bedrooms. And then, you know, we just kind of have to develop little habits here and there about our exposures and be sensible about it. Like, you know, if you do pick a hotel, don't pick one right next to a cell phone tower. do the lower floors in a hotel. So the higher floors are actually, you're more exposed to all the towers surrounding.
Oh,
You know,
interesting.
so
and there's me thinking I was doing a good thing because I'm going to walk the stairwell.
yeah. So, and you know, it's a balance. But now that you have you're going to have that shielded tank, you don't have to worry as much about that. So, you can still do the stairwell if you want to.
Yeah, that's cool. So, you know, what are some of the negative effects that people are exposing themselves to when, you know, that they feel it? Like, you know, like we've spoken about various elements from studies, whether it be thyroid or cancer or anything like that. Obviously, some of us are more sensitive than others, and that's why sometimes it's going to be hard to convince your spouse if you're the one that feels the sensitivity, but they don't. But what are some of the effects, especially now with the onset of 5G coming, that, you know, people should be concerned about?
Yeah, well, some of the common things that we see people complain about that's fixed after shielding would be things like ringing in the ears, just general fatigue, depression, sweating at night, inability to sleep, insomnia is a huge thing. We've seen people's sleep scores with the Oura Ring improve significantly after shielding.
You mentioned, was it Ben Lynch?
Yeah, Dr. Ben Lynch and his wife, I've got a video on our media page at shieldedhealing.com where he talks about that when I'm interviewing with him in his office, how they saw marked improvement in their deep sleep after they shielded their bedroom and started sleeping in there. So those are some of the things. Like, for every person it's different. Our body wants to heal. That's kind of the point. It's a repair organism and repairing organism, and we're constantly trying to figure out ways where we can deal with the stressor. That's why, like, when we get sick, we get really tired, we want to go to sleep. That's our repair time. And so, a lot of people, in the natural health world, the more holistic perspective, you understand that when a symptom arises, your body is telling you something. And so, like when your temperature goes up, it's telling you that there's an infection. And so, conventional medicine would be take some Tylenol, some Advil, get that temperature down. But, my approach was I got sick right before we went on this big trip. I went into my shielded sauna, got really, really hot, took a really hot Epsom salt bath, got really well hydrated. I'm trying to lower as much of the EMF stress as possible because we have our whole home shielded. And I just spent pretty much 12 hours doing that. And then after, a night's sleep in a shielded room, I felt great, the next day. So you're supporting the body to do what it's trying to do, and the symptoms are a sign that maybe you should kind of help it along. So
yeah, and there's so many symptoms now today that we weren't dealing with 30, 40, 50 years ago. I always refer to this when you look at the statistics of whether it be cancer, whether it be thyroid issues, whether it be a lower in testosterone, mental disorders like depression. Our DNA hasn't changed over the last 30, 40, 50 years, but our environment definitely has. So whatever we can do to get back to applying more ancestral wisdom that we did before, the better. Maybe it's a shotgun approach. Maybe it's this, eliminating the sugar, trying to stay away from plastics, eliminating a lot of, like you said, these bleaches and these artificial soaps and dyes and makeups. There's just so many things that we need to make that shotgun approach with. But like you said, not be paranoid about it, but whatever you can control. Obviously, the food system that we're exposed to today isn't what our ancestors were exposed to. So whatever we can mitigate in that regards, maybe it's going to wild caught, grass-fed, organic, whatever, then why wouldn't you do it?
Right, yeah, exactly. And what we can control is also really important. And we found some things in your house here too that you can control, like turning the Wi-Fi off at night, putting that on one of those switches that turns off the electricity to the router. The TV we found had a Wi-Fi signal coming off of it. and then making sure you know how to turn the Bluetooth and do airplane mode on your phone, that sort of thing. So there are things that you can control, things that you can do right away that'll help reduce your overall load. But ultimately, we've kind of landed at this point in human history where we live in a toxic world. We need to live kind of a more detox lifestyle. You spoke earlier about how you're on some binders with chlorella and charcoal and spirulina and some of those things. That's because you've been exposed to some toxicities. And so you kind of have to do that, go through those rounds every once in a while to clear out what we're exposed to. It's really not much different with the EMF, but with the EMF we can at least stop that 1/3 part of your life where you're sleeping, and then you can also kind of develop better habits throughout the day and wire things that were wireless. You know, there's more and more wireless, and with 5G they're making everything wireless, even in your house, and everything's going to be much more saturated. So it's becoming more and more important to do this sort of thing, and we're really kind of on the cutting edge of doing this, and also measuring the body as an antenna, because we're realizing that there's all these frequencies that we're being influxed with, and the body's responding more to some frequencies than to other frequencies. And a lot of this stuff has been tested extensively, showing that that's causing DNA damage and all sorts of other issues, including cancers over a period of time. So, and it's not just about not getting a disease, it's about living a joyful and happy life where you can wake up and feeling energized, you can enjoy your family, your friends, and get out there in the world, and not in a way where you're freaking out and so like with all the EMF that's around you, but in a way that, you know what, I can have a positive outlook on this because I know that I'm protected at night, and I have a plan to, you know, a biological plan, some kind of supplement or food plan to deal with the stress, and not just EMF stress, but emotional stress, any kind of stress that's out there during the day. So this modern life has so many stressors. EMF is one of those things, but we also have to be thinking about the chemicals, the toxicities, the emotional stressors, and even societal stressors and things like that. You know, we really have to take this more holistic approach to the entire, you know, health picture, really.
Especially during this time.
Yeah, especially during this time.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything else?
I think maybe you touched on the spots, like people could unplug things from their bedrooms, like humidifiers or, you know, things that you don't think about would be causing some stress.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask that question then. So what is it in people's homes that they wouldn't maybe think that could be causing stress, within their bedroom, within their living room? You know, what are some of those common traits?
So a lot of people will plug things in right next to their bed, whether it's a lamp, their cell phone charger, dehumidifiers, air filters even. You know, you want to breathe clean air at night, but you also don't want to bring the electricity right next to your bed. Or a lot of the air filters will have a fan with a motor in it that's spinning, and it creates a magnetic field that's going right into their bed. In fact, one of the main things that we find in a lot of children's rooms is those white noise machines. Mm-hmm. And the ones that have a fan on them that's in this dome type of shape, they emit a magnetic field that goes about 10 to 12 feet sometimes. And sometimes that's right next to the child's head while they're sleeping.
And this is supposed to help them sleep.
Yeah, it's supposed to help them sleep, but then it's this big stressor. So everything you have that's plugged into the wall, ideally you move that away from the bed on the opposite side of the room. And then things like lamps and things that you actually need plugged in next to the bed, you need to have that on an off switch. So the little remote switch that you can just turn off, it shuts off the power to the cord, and then there's no electricity running through that. Because even if you have it plugged in, if it's not turned on, there's still electricity flowing through it. So you have to cut the power. It's like a little switch that'll shut the whole power off in the entire cord.
Right, okay. Yeah, this is fascinating. This is interesting because, we spoke earlier is that, myself for one, and I tell all my clients this, is that you have to prioritize your recovery. Your recovery dictates your performance. And of course, if you're not sleeping or getting the right quality sleep, your REM, your deep sleep, you are not recovering. And, this is something that I think everybody should look at. Obviously, there's only one of you, but I think everybody should look at hiring your services to go through their home, because I'm sure more times than not, you find these issues in their home. And, maybe they're not sleeping, they're not recovering, they don't feel good, they don't have the energy. And a lot of it is boiling down to this. So if people, like I know that you're traveling around at the moment, but if people are to find out where you are traveling to, what state, and if they wanted to contact you and get a consultation or have you come into their home, how should they reach out to you?
Well, if you go to our website, shieldedhealing.com, we have all the tours listed in our store there, and then also some products that you can usually purchase right away and install, and you're going to have some effectiveness with those. But I've actually trained about 6 people to be a part of our team, and they travel all around the United States as well.
Right.
And so, I had to do that because I'm just one guy, but I'm trying to do it at this really high level that no one else is doing, and approaching it from this more holistic ancestral perspective. And we want to be the first and the last EMF consult that anybody ever needs or wants, because there's a lot of services out there, and we really just want to be able to do it one time and fix all the issues that we found, and then we come back for the free retest afterwards and then do a little tweaking here and there. So we'll do that with you guys after we've implemented some of the solutions. And that's the people that I've trained, they're also trained the same way. They go on like 30 assessments with me for the training, and then we have training like twice a year in person where we do updates and we hop on calls. We have it's a small company. We're just a small team, so we're really tight knit.
Yeah, following the quality as opposed to the quantity.
Yeah.
At the moment, and they're traveling around as well, same as you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you ever so much, Brian. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. It's definitely been eye-opening and very educational. And I can't wait to just implement some of these right now, just to quantify their effects, because I like to quantify everything.
Yeah.
And report back, and hopefully we'll get you back on and have a follow-up podcast.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.